Hey everybody, doing some programming today in the XOD software. So a couple things that I'm doing today starting off is I've got a Arduino controlled robot right here. It's got a whole bunch of different functionality to it, and what I'm doing today is focusing on these two motors right here, and eventually this tutorial series will go through and cover everything that uses the servo in the front, the range sensor to kind of detect objects, and then also the motors. But for this particular one, we're going to focus today on these motors right here. And like I said, I'm using the XOD software to program that, and I've got a new file created right here, a new project in the XOD software. So I'm going to start from scratch and kind of show you everything along the way. But if you haven't already, head over to XOD.io, download the desktop IDE, or you can use the browser IDE. It works either way. And then you're also going to need a library for this one. And the one that we need is by NKRKV, and it's the AF motor library. And the way that you can add that into XOD is go there, Control C to copy it, and then we'll head back over to the IDE, and then we can go File, Add Library, and just paste that in, and then double click on that, and that should get that library up for you. But I think as quick as anything going with this, what we can actually do is just double tap and search for DC motor. If I can spell it right, DC motor. And there it is. So this is the one that we want. It's the Adafruit motor, or the Adafruit motor shield that's on top of my Arduino Uno right here. And what we can actually do, and this is what I think is probably as quick and as easy as we can program anything in any software, is I can just go in and change these values right here. So I've got that node, and then I can go in and I'm going to make the left one 1 and the right one 0.5. And so looking at this right here, I've got the two, I've got this one right here, which is my left one, M1, that connects to the left one, which is on the top of the screen, and then M2, which is connect to the right. And you can see within that XOD IDE, anytime you click on a node, you can see a little bit about each one of those inputs for this one. And so -1 would run it backwards full speed, +1 is going to run it forward full speed. So what this should do when I load this up is what we'll end up seeing is we'll see the left one that's running full speed and the right one that's running half speed. And what that's going to allow us to do is to take this robot and let it travel around in a circle. And I'm going to drag this up. We can see it deploying right there on the bottom. And once this gets loaded up, awesome. So it may be a little bit tough to see in the video, but in fact we can see this one moving faster and that one moving slower. All right, so here you can see that left motor set to 1, the right one set to 0.5, and you can see the circle that it's traveling in as a result of the different speeds of those two motors. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and change those to zeros, just so this thing's not running continuously and wasting my battery. And we want to do a little bit more, so like I said, that's really quick and up and running, and we've got this thing going. But we want to do a little bit more than just have this thing drive around in a circle. And we want to add some more control to this. So what I want to do is, oh, I guess I double clicked on that accidentally. I want to delete it. What I want to do is show you, if you've not already, check out the documentation on XOD, and one of the really good tutorials on here is the traffic light example, where they light up a red, a yellow, and then a green light. We're going to do something really similar. So they've got 3 states, green, yellow, and red, and we're going to have that same idea, except we're going to be able to tell this robot to move forward or move backwards or turn or whatever it is like that. And so what we want to do is we want to go ahead and create a new node. So Control N creates a new node, and we're going to call this one forward. And what we want to do within this forward node is we want to control that motor. So if we go back and search for that motor, we're going to get that again. And pretty common as you're creating states within XOD is to get a input pulse that's going to start this off, and then also an output pulse. Spell that right, an output pulse that's going to finish it. And just like in the traffic light example, if you've been through it, we're going to name the input set, and we're going to name the output done. And so what we can do now is, this is what's going to happen when we first started. It's going to start up here, and then we're going to kind of work our way down to eventually controlling that motor. And what we want to do is we want to set these numbers to whatever we want. So for the forward one, I'm going to have it just turn on. And the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to use a gate to control that. So I'm going to drag this over, and I'm going to have these both have the same number. And when this gate is opened up, I'm going to let one travel through to both of those. So motor 1 and motor 2 are both going to be moving forward based on whatever number I make this right here. And then what we want to do is have that gate open and close based off a certain amount of time. And so we're going to use the delay node to control that gate. And so what I want to do is that delay node is going to set, and then we're going to have that act on the gate. So it's going to open up the gate as soon as this thing opens up. And you can read about the delay node over here on the right. And then what I want is, after this delay is over, that gate will automatically close. And then we want to set done, which kind of moves us on to our next state. And one thing that's a little bit tricky about this when we're working with the motors is we want to make sure that this gate gets closed first before we move on to done. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in a little defer pulse right here. And what that means is these two things, that gate is closing and we're moving on to done simultaneously. What that defer does is it allows the right-hand side to happen first, and then this waits a second, and then we move on to the next state. So that's our forward state, and we can go over here into main, and now we can now search, and we've got our new node that we've got. So we've got this forward node, and we want that to occur on boot. And I guess I forgot to set the delay on that. So let's go back into that forward node, and let's set the time. Right now it's set to 0. Let's set that time to 2 seconds. So this is going to run forward for 2 seconds. And then let's go ahead and create another node, Control N, and let's call this one the stop node. And I'm going to get all this same stuff. So highlight everything, Control C to copy it. We'll move into that stop node, Control V to paste it. And then what we're going to do is, so for the forward node, those numbers were going to be 1. And for the stop node, we're going to change those numbers to 0. And so now within main, we can call this, and we can have stop be our next node that we want to run, or our next state that we move into. And so now we can go boot, forward, and then stop. And let's do this just as a test to make sure everything's running and working well. I'm going to go ahead and upload that up. And we can see our robot. I've got mine lifted off the ground with a set of drill bits right here. But that way we can see these motors spinning without my robot taking off on me. And there we can see that green status bar, it loading up. Upload successful. Oh, I forgot one thing. So just like before, we have to make sure that these, so right now those two things are happening sequentially, but it's initializing both of them at the same time. So we actually have to add another defer pulse in right here to make sure that those are not initializing at the same time. There we go. So that gives us enough time to initialize that DC motor by adding that defer pulse in. And then now what it can do is it'll hang on just a second for it to initialize, and then we should see forward, and then it'll stop. There it goes, moving forward, and then we get stopped. Perfect, exactly what I had expected. And then now the next thing that we want to do, so forward and stop are both good, but what I'd like for us to do for this particular one is to have this motor that actually goes forward, turns around, comes back, and then returns back around to its original position. So what we're going to do is we're going to make one more node, and we're going to go Control N, and I'm going to say this one's going to be left 180, so 180 degrees to turn it around. And let's paste back in what we had from before so it's still saved, Control V. And now what we want to do is for the left 180, we actually want to have different numbers for M1 and M2. So I'm going to go ahead and get another gate. Where's gate number? There it is. And what we're going to do is, on mine, M1 is the left motor. So what I want to do is I want to turn left. So I want that left motor to be on, set to 1. And then I want my right motor to be off, set to 0, which is the number bound to this gate. And then I'm going to have the same thing. This gate will open at the beginning of that delay on set, and then it will close once we move on to done. And now we can go back into our main function, which I closed out of. You double click and open that back up. So let's do this. Let's have, I don't want it to go forward and stop. The first thing I want to do is I want it to go forward. Oh, and I guess one more thing in my, is I want to change the time on this. If I turn that on for 2 seconds, that's going to be a really long time for it to be turning. And I tinkered around with this. I think the time that I ended up landing on was 0.9 seconds. Did a pretty good job for me to turn that around. And I've had a little bit of differences as far as how charged my batteries are and things like that. So you may have to play with what that number ends up being for yours to turn around 180 degrees. But 0.9 ends up being a good number for me. So for 0.9 seconds, it's going to turn before it goes back into moving forward. So we've got forward, and then the next thing we want to do is go left 180. So that's going to make this robot move forward and then turn back around to its left. And then what I want to do is I want it to come back to me. So I'm going to call forward again. And then I want it to go back into its original position, left 180. And I'm kind of repeating code a little bit. We can see that right here. And I could put this into a loop and it may make it a little bit easier, but for now it's just happening twice, so we can see that right there. So forward, left 180, forward, left 180, and then stop. So let's go ahead and load that up, see what it looks like. So now we should see both of them moving, and then only the left one, which is the top on your screen, and then both of them moving, and then only the left one, which is, again, the top one. Loading up. So we got forward, and then the left one, forward, and then the left one, and then stop. Perfect. All right, so here's a video of the robot in action. We can see it's going forward, and we see our forward state, and then the left 180 state, again the forward state, and then finally the left 180 state again. So we kind of get that down and back functionality of this robot that we were wanting at the beginning. So the next thing and kind of where we go from here is we can add in a whole bunch of different nodes. We can have 90 degrees to the left or 90 degrees to the right, or a whole bunch of different stuff. And eventually, like I said, the goal of this robot, this tutorial was just controlling those motors. The goal of this robot eventually is that it's going to use this servo to look around, automatically detect objects, and then turn left or right to avoid those objects. So this is the initial part. Oh, and I guess I unplugged it and replugged it back in right there. But this is the initial part right here, just getting this thing rolling and controlling those motors. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Leave me a comment with any questions or anything that you guys have.